Good morning. Welcome to Wakefield Memorial High School. This is our 12th community forum. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your attendance. We'll do introductions, and there'll also be time at the end for questions and answers. This meeting is being recorded and will be up on the WCAT website if you'd like to look back, or if you'd like to share it with other members of the community, or if people who couldn't be here, if they have questions that might be addressed through this forum, it might be perfect for them to have that viewing opportunity. We're also going to be welcoming anyone Zooming in to ask questions virtually, and so we'll process those and we'll take those as they come as well. And so we'll start off with introductions. My name is Doug Lyons. I'm the superintendent of schools.
Tim O'Brien, I'm the Director of Facilities for Wakefield Public Schools.
Steve Mayo, Town Administrator.
Joe Bertrand, I'm the Chairman of the Permanent Building Committee.
Lynn Stapleton from Left Field. We're the OPMs for the project.
Brian Black, Architect with SMMA.
Erin Prostilio, Civil Engineer with SMMA.
Good morning, Helen Fantini, Project Manager with SMMA.
Good morning, Alan Dahan, Project Architect with SMMA.
And I'm Tim Baker, Project Manager with Left Field.
So in addition to the meeting being recorded, and that's accessible through WCAT, the slides will also be available as well if you'd like to access those. And if you have questions that might not get addressed during this event, you can certainly reach out to really anybody on the panel, and we will do our best to answer your questions or to direct you to someone who can answer those questions. So, I'd like to start off just by focusing the conversation, why we pursued the MSBA grant. So in 2018, 2019, we wrote and created and wrote a statement of interest to be entered into the MSBA grant. And the grant process it's like making an application to be part of a grant process. And if your SOI is accepted, what the state will do is they will partially fund your project. In 2018 and 2019, January of 19, we submitted an SOI, and it was accepted by the MSBA, and they decided that they would support a feasibility study and the assessment of this building, as well as options that we could pursue to improve the educational program for our students. So that's why the grant, but really the goal here, what we're seeking to do in looking at a new building, we're really seeking to really improve safety and accessibility. We're looking to offer a more consistent academic program and extracurricular activities that include band, music, and athletics, okay? And we're also looking to address the accreditation issue through NEASC. So the National Educational Association for Schools and Colleges, they call it NEASC is the acronym. So NEASC accredits schools. They come through, they assess academic programming, they assess curriculum, they assess teaching and learning. And since I've been here, the feedback that we've gotten has been quite good in regard to teaching and learning, or in regard to the performance that the teachers are providing and what they're doing for the students. And in terms of students' sense of community, sense of belonging and participation, I think that was a area of recognition from NEASC as well. And so that's just trying to really focus the conversation and why we're here and what we're doing. And as we go through the slides, we will address each of these things. When we talk, and a big part of this is safety and accessibility. As you went around the building, you might have seen some areas or recognized that if you were a student that needed an accommodation, or if you were a student in a wheelchair, that parts of the building might not be accessible to you, or you might not be able to get from the history hallway down to the art hallway in a reasonable amount of time. Normally it takes about 2 to 4 minutes for students to pass, but if you needed an accommodation, your wheelchair might not fit into the elevator, or you might have to take turns if you're in a class with more than one student that needs an accommodation. So it could take you up to 10, 15, 20 minutes if you could get access. So you'll notice that the courtyard is not accessible. So there are a lot of improvements that we're looking to make. And in terms of the accreditation piece, I think what NEASC is really saying to us, so the status that we are on with NEASC is probation. And I think really the point that they've hit home to us in their most recent assessment and visit. They came as a team and visited our school a few weeks ago. In their most recent visit, what they really wanted to stress was the deficits are really about the physical plant here. And in terms of the educational plan and just thinking about what teachers could do or should be doing in 2023 to get better or different educational experiences for students and different educational outcomes as well. And so we have some teachers here this morning that I'd like to introduce, that I'd like to introduce to talk a little bit about the existing classrooms and what we're proposing and how that might improve teaching and learning. I'd like to introduce Margaret Messier, our English Curriculum Coordinator. Margaret?
Hi, thank you so much for coming today, and I'm really excited to talk about the potential of what a new building could do to enhance our curriculum, which I feel like we're constantly evolving to best meet the needs of the students in front of us. So in addition to just the basics of better lighting, better ventilation, which will be huge, right now our spaces are not flexible. And as we evolve our curriculum to provide multiple means of expression, multiple means of representation, to allow the students to move from direct instructions to smaller groups to independent work, we are really constrained by the physical spaces that we have. So a new building would allow us to not have to send a group of kids out into the hallway or struggle to try to find a classroom if a group of kids needs to go to work, and to have those kind of spaces and allow that flexibility to meet those diverse needs within our classrooms. Also, furniture, which sounds like a small thing, would be huge just for that same reason, for those groupings and for moving and allowing students to access materials in different ways within a 60-minute period. So as I said, I'm really proud of the evolution of our curriculum, and a new building would really aid us in being able to best deliver that.
Thank you, Margaret. John? This is John Hanron. He's head of the science department.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
Next slide, Ian, please.
So hello, my name's John Hanron. I'm the science department coordinator here at the high school. So we in the science department are really excited about the prospect of a new high school building and kind of what that could mean for us as we continue to adapt and innovate our curriculum and instruction to continue to meet the diverse learning needs of our student population. So back in 2016, Massachusetts adopted a new curriculum frameworks for science, and this is based on the National Next Generation Science Standards. And these incorporate a lot of the scientific practices, which include stuff like asking questions, developing models, planning and carrying out investigations, stuff like that. And so we worked really hard to adapt our curriculum to integrate these practices into our instruction. So that looks like a lot of inquiry-based learning, labs, hands-on learning, stuff like that. And so we're finding that the spaces that we currently have really limit us in the capacity to provide students with the meaningful experiences to engage in that type of learning. So for example, we might have a teacher who is switching between, say, biology and environmental science, and might take like 10 minutes at the start of class to transition that lab experience for students. And so it's leading to like a loss of instructional time on learning. And so we're excited for flexible spaces and what that could mean for us and the experiences that we can provide to our students.
Thank you, John. Next is Diana Ho, our library media specialist here at the high school.
Hi, I'm Diana Ho. Over the course of the past 10 years, we've worked really hard to make low and no-cost cosmetic upgrades to our library. We've taken existing storage spaces and created instructional areas in the room. Despite our great collection, despite all these efforts, despite our students' enjoyment in the library's location and layout have created impediments to our instructional practice. Much of the library is not ADA compliant. It is hard to find, it's uncomfortable, there's no natural light, which makes it very unattractive to students. We also can host up to 5 classes at a given time, but that's kind of a problem because we have some students that are coming and expecting silence or a quiet space, but we have collaboration going on. And that kind of speaks towards what Margaret said about the need for breakout spaces throughout the building. The new library would truly be at the heart of the school. It would have ample access to outdoor views and daylight. It would have increased access to technology and differentiated seating throughout. And it would also have those spaces for silence and collaboration simultaneously. Our students and staff take great pride in our current building and in our library, and while we've worked really hard to improve the space as it exists currently, there's aspects of the physical plant or the physical library space that impede our work and impact the student experience.
Thank you very much, Diana. Next is Amy McLeod. She'll talk about kind of our proposed spaces and what that might mean for circulation and for the students moving about the building.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning. The first space that I want to talk about is, for those of you who are on the tours, the hallways and the circulation of the building. As we know, especially now post-COVID, we are really trying to create an educational space that brings students into a community and makes them feel part of a learning community. The way that our school is laid out now, with long, confusing, winding hallways, spaces where students can be off site, off eyes for long periods of the day, long travel times between classes. Some of our students can navigate that okay, but we're finding that more and more of our students who need more support, who need more connection to their peers, and who need more connection to the adults in the building, the school can be very hard to navigate, can create stress, and also can lead our students into places in the building where we don't want them congregating during the day. We would rather see places that are built for academic collaboration, both in hallways and in nooks along the building, connected to the library media space that Diana talked about, but that also have areas such as a student support services suite where students who need more support throughout the day can find the adults, find the spaces that they need to decompress and have space in the building. Moving into the next slide, talking about community spaces. You're sitting in a community space right now that serves the purpose for today, sure. We can gather here, we can look at an old projector, we can sit together. But if you look at a typical weekend, like this weekend, we have many, many events going on at the high school. What we would like is the high school to serve as a community space as well as an educational space, so that if community members are coming in to have a forum like this, we have more flexible spaces. We have places where students could do large group presentations. Parents could come in and participate in the educational life of the school. We also envision spaces where students can be doing art presentations, musical presentations, things that we could do that we don't have to reach out to other spaces in the community, but then can become the heart of our school. In the designs that you'll see today, you'll see the architects have worked on a more open, collaborative, common space that would greet people as they come in the building and would really create the heart of the school. So that's what you'll see later on this morning, and how we hope to expand the use of this building to serve the needs of both the school and the community.
Thank you so much, Amy. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to introduce Tim O'Brien to talk a little bit about facility deficiencies.
Sure. So as many of you have seen, whether you're familiar with the building or we're on the tour, a lot of the issues that we run into on a daily basis, a lot of the mechanical, electrical systems have reached the end of their life. As you walk through the halls, you'll notice you'll hit some cold spots, some very warm spots, and so we have to be creative to manage those. In addition, you'll see a lot of the areas where there's roof leaks. As we saw on the tour, actually overnight, one of those tiles had fallen due to a leak after the snow had fell on Friday. Sorry. So, we do our best to manage those issues. A lot of the systems are no longer efficient, and like I said, has reached the end of their life. The roof in its entirety needs replacement. We make a lot of Band-Aid fixes on a regular basis. We frequently have subcontractors in the building trying to manage temperature and roof issues and things of that nature. And those costs continue to increase. Next slide, please. In regards to sustainability, our hopes for the new building are zero net energy ready, ultra low water use, environmental quality, health and wellness, so more natural light, things of that nature, and also some educational opportunities for the students to be able to be more in tune with the energy that the building's using, water use and electrical use, things of that nature, so have the students be more incorporated with how the building is managed and learn more about those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next slide, please, Ian. So this is a picture of, we have 2 elevators in this building. We don't have an elevator that goes from the 3rd level down to the 1st level. There are 3 floors, and it's a little deceiving because there's a hallway above the existing hallway right out here to the left where the main office is. So that's kind of an upper floor. There's a carriage or an elevator that goes down to floor level, and then you need to go down the hall about 50 yards, and there's another small carriage right down there on the left. Carriage, I'm referring to elevator, please. And so you can see that, some wheelchairs do not fit into this space. I've also learned from our local fire department and from our kind of ambulance company that they cannot put a stretcher. If they needed to move someone from floor to floor, a stretcher does not fit in that elevator, right? And so when we talk about accessibility, those are things in regard to safety and kind of ADA compliance are things that just really need to be remedied, really without exception. And so at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Bertrand, who's really expert. Joe, how many schools have you built?
We built the Galvin, and we renovated the Walton School.
So Joe has quite a bit of experience. Joe and Chip Tarbell work together and are really a go-to for us in kind of guiding this work. Joe will be talking through the next number of slides. Joe?
Thank you. Since 2019, the Permanent Building Committee has been dealing with the high school for various discussions, and since 2020, the School Building Committee was also added to the Permanent Building Committee, and it consisted of over 30 individuals. We've had numerous focus groups, 34 public hearings, 11 community forums, all to discuss the possibilities of a high school, either a renovation or a new one. The initial issue that we had to deal with is where to place a new high school. We had over a dozen scenarios that were shown to us by the architects as to where it should be placed. Then eventually it was decided that it would be placed on the Beasley Oval track and field. We then, during this process, were involved in the MSBA process, which essentially we've gone through the feasibility study, and that was completed. And then modular 4 was the schematic design, a preferred schematic report and a schematic design. There are, if you can do the next slide, as part of these modules with the MSBA, you have to look at 3 different scenarios. This indicates the involvement. This is the 3 different scenarios that you have to look at. This is required by the MSBA. You first have to look at a code improvement. In other words, get the building in its present condition up to code. The second is the renovation of the building, and the third is the new high school. Next slide. The code upgrade is essentially, it costs $178 million. It doesn't help with the facility itself. It doesn't change any of the spaces. It doesn't improve any hallways. It doesn't improve some of the areas involved. It really was a total Band-Aid put on this building. And you would have to have essentially mobile classes while the code upgrade is going on. So eventually you do not actually enhance at all the educational experience. The next is a addition or renovation. Essentially, the same problem exists where you would have to have a mobile classrooms, you would have disruption in the school year, you would be improving the facility, obviously. You would not renovate the entire building, but a great deal of it. It would also take a year, approximately construction we estimated would take almost a year longer than a new building. And you would disrupt the entire school year with students going to mobile classrooms. The mobile classroom is very important because MSBA that is not an eligible cost that they will reimburse and assist in reimbursing it. So it would be the entire cost to the town. Lastly, there is the new construction. It solves the educational problems. There is no need for extra mobile classrooms. Everything would be done while the students are still here in this building, and then would be transferred. And we did this before. We did this with the Galvin. It's exactly what occurred, where we built the Galvin next to the old Galvin Middle School. It was about this far apart when you looked at it. And once that new building was finished, we were able to transfer the students right over to the new Galvin. Now, initially, in April of last year, we had estimates from 2 different companies, PM&C and AM Fogarty, and the initial estimates came at $220 million for a new high school. However, we learned, and they learned, that the inflation factor due to the pandemic has created a significant increase and escalation of those costs. The new high school now is estimated at the figure of $273,250,903, which was approved by the MSBA on December 21st, 2022 at their Board of Directors meeting. The MSBA would contribute approximately $65 million to the town for the building of the school. The actual construction costs are $220 million, which include about $30 million in contingencies, not just for the owners, but for also we put in an escalation contingency as well as a construction contingency. So as of next week, on the 28th, the town will be asked to vote for that budget of $273 million at town meeting. Okay?
Thank you, Joe. In regard to safety, on the prior slide, on slide 18, you'll see kind of also a realignment of Hemlock Road, which we believe that is a real challenge for our students to navigate in the morning. I don't know if you've dropped off students or if you've been in traffic the way it's aligned right now. And so part of the new construction would kind of realign that space and likely put in a traffic circle, which would really slow things down and really, we believe, really improve and make safer that area, both for students that might be walking and driving. And when we have a lot of new drivers, a lot of student drivers, we believe that that is really kind of a high value add in this project. Can we move to slide 20, Ian, the featured? So in regard to the new construction, the features that we will be adding that really will address the educational plan. And so as part of the project, the teachers and kind of our design team, we create an educational plan that addresses the experience that students have here. It addresses teaching and learning. It addresses accessibility. It addresses safety. It addresses extracurricular activities, the full experience that students will have. We believe that, really, it will improve educational outcomes. It will be a building that's safer for students, more accessible for students. It will provide different teaching and learning experience in regard to hands-on activities and more practical experiences to help them in the real world as they kind of move on to whatever might be next for them, whether it be college or work or the military or any of those things. So it also kind of creates opportunities to really bring in better virtual and technology programming to support teaching and learning. And it supports really more effective special education programs and practices, which right now is a real area that's deficited for us. And so, if you think about, for example, our counseling suite, it hasn't changed for many, many years. The idea of the work of our guidance counselors has changed. It's changed over the years, and as the needs of students have changed. And those spaces do not currently support that. The new building would support that. And it would also be an addition to the community, right? And so like Galvin, since this is my 8th year in Wakefield, and during that time, we've centralized our voting. And so, for example, that's a community space where the building is serving the community. And we believe a new high school would also serve the community really, really well. So that's an important piece. Next slide, please. So in terms of the square footage, I think it's important to note that the existing building is about 250,000 square feet, a smidge more, 250, 430. And the proposed construction is 259,847. And so again, that's with the additional spaces. I know that we're talking about extracurriculars, but it will also offer us opportunities to kind of teach in terms of it will offer us to allow us to teach physical education and wellness differently than we do right now as well. Next slide, please. And again, you've heard me say this. We're just trying to emphasize this. It will improve the core academic, special education, arts, music, and really meet the district's educational plan. And last, things that, we are just some items that were requested that are not included in the project. And I know that there was a conversation going on earlier about athletic spaces and what we would have liked to have had. Some of the things that we would have liked to have had in this project, the MSBA would not support. So just like there are requirements in terms of a minimum educational plan, there's also a ceiling where MSBA says, there are things that we won't support. So additional classrooms, additional storage, an indoor track at the field house is something, an 8-lane track outdoors. And so it's going to be a 6-lane track in terms of the oval, but the straights will be 8 lanes. And so, the Black Box Theater, that was really, it's a community, that was a community project, that our new theater would kind of take on that name and that space in tradition and to kind of recognize the work that was done to construct that space. But we've also cut other areas like a scene shop and again, additional storage. Next slide, please. So I'd like to ask Lynn to talk a little bit about the schedule in terms of where we are right now.
Next slide, please. So as Joe had said, on December 21st, 2022, the MSBA, after fully vetting our project from a project scope perspective, educational plan, space summary, budget, and schedule, voted unanimously to approve the new project as presented. With that, the town has 120 days in order to approve the project to maintain MSBA funding. So there is a special town meeting scheduled for January 28th to vote on the project, and then that will be followed by a ballot vote sometime in March Town council, after the January 28th meeting, will be voting to confirm the date in March for the ballot election. This is all in hopes that we will begin bidding and construction in January of 2024, in anticipation of opening the school at the beginning of January 2027. That's a little bit different than we had previously stated. We will be working maybe to hopefully to back up that schedule, but currently right now, January 2027 is our planned opening. At that point, we would start all the site work in athletic fields, completing by that summer, August of 2027, and that would be followed by MSBA's final audit and final reimbursement to the project by January 2028.
Thank you, Lynn. Next, our town manager, Steve Mayo, will talk a little bit about the financing and what that is going to look like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doug. As was stated by a couple of other speakers, the SBA School Building Authority did approve the project and approved this project, so that's what we're voting on, is this project on December 21st. What was very positive, not only getting the vote that they approved it, was we did get a little bit more money than we had originally thought from the SBA. They did increase their square footage reimbursement a little bit, so that lowers the town share. So we'll be borrowing, roughly $213 million for the project. So after hearing about how great it is and seeing all the great amenities, I'm the Grinch at the Christmas party to tell you about how we're going to pay for it. So next slide, please, Ian. So right after we received SBA approval, I requested from our architectural team and our owner's project manager team a cash flow analysis to see. It's great to know what it's going to cost us to build the school, but how are we going to spend it? How is that cash going to come in? When is the money needed, in other words? And think of this as if you were building a home, the same thing. You are not, you're building a home, and I'll do it very easy for everybody, $100,000. I think we have a builder in here. You could build a home for $100,000 for me, right? Back in the day, maybe, right? So you're not going to spend that $100,000 all in one day or all in 1 month. You're going to go through the project. You're going to build the foundation, spend a little bit, and your cash is going to go up. We don't want to pay interest on any money that we're not using. We're not utilizing it. Why would I want, as a taxpayer and as a town, to pay interest on money that we're not using? So we asked for a cash flow analysis, which we got, that's going to show we really are ratcheting up our cash over the next few years. And we're also going to, so we will not be going to the complete tax increase until we get well into the project. So, and these are yearly figures, okay? So for fiscal year '24, we'll be what we talked about, it's the tax effect on the homeowners, and it's up there whether your house is worth $400,000, $600,000, or $800,000. And another slide I'm going to show you to do the math is going to be $13 a year or $32 a year if your house is worth $1 million. Same thing in 2005. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold. And the other thing with municipal bonding is you pay interest in arrears. So that's why you're saying, geez, I know you're spending the money, how come we're not paying it that year? You pay interest in arrears on that, so there's a delayed effect. Really, it doesn't ratchet up to fiscal year 2026. We're starting to really get into or paying for the money in the project and what's going on. So we went out to bond council with not only this cash flow needs, but also, I don't know where the rate's going to be when we actually lock it in. We're not going to lock in on day one, because I don't know how much we're going to need in the end. And, that's just the way that bonding works right now. So we believe, after talking with the Finance Committee, after talking with Bond Council, that rates, the long-range projection for rates in that time for municipal borrowing, and Wakefield has a AAA bond rating, will be a little bit lower in the 4% range, 4.25% to 5.25%. So what I did here on this slide is I showed a range, because I don't know exactly where the rates are going to be. If I did, I would be behind a palm tree somewhere with my computer, making the big money, right? I wouldn't be here talking about this. Let's put it that way. So I'm giving a range to the taxpayer. I'm hoping it could be even lower than 4.25. Some people on the Finance Committee think that we would be lower, but I think this is a good conservative estimate. So depending on the year and depending upon where your property value is, so let's say if you have a $600,000 home, when we get to the full crux of the matter in fiscal year '29, we're paying for the entire amount that's borrowed, you're probably looking at anywhere between $1,023 to $1,172, so less than $100 a month. And that's, for that $600,000. Next slide, please. So what you can do if you want, and this will be up on the website, on the thing, you can go and say, look at a year, and I wrote it down per $100,000, and you can plug in your assessed value. You have that at home. It's on your tax bill, and you can see what it's going to cost you, you personally. What you multiply it by, if your home is worth $600,000 or $550,000, multiply 550 times 0.96, and you see in fiscal year '27, that's what we're projecting it would be. Of course, rates could be lower, I hope, and maybe that would help out. Next slide, please. One thing that I'm very proud about we have is, and this is a mitigating factor, is our Wakefield Senior Tax Discount Program. People may have remembered this, that 3 years ago, we opted into this program as a community, and it was a unanimous vote at town meeting. And what it means is that if you meet certain criteria, which is you have to be a senior, you have to have certain income levels, a single person, $62,000 a year, head of household, 78, married, 93, you can qualify for something called the state circuit breaker. That's going to cover you on your state income taxes, and it's really not a very hard process to go through, and I would certainly hope that people would certainly take advantage of that. That has nothing to do with your real estate taxes. So what we did as a community, we decided 3 years ago that we would match as a community, out of our own tax levy, and I will tell you, probably around 200, 250, 225 households a year, entities a year, take advantage of this. And I think that they're receiving off of their taxes, real estate taxes, roughly $1,000. So that's a great benefit for a lot of our seniors now. So what we decided to do, again as a community, and again with 100% vote at town meeting, is why don't we up that to 150%? So if you're getting $1,200 for the state, and you qualify, you can come in and meet with our assessor's office, and you could get up to $1,800 off of your real estate taxes, okay? It's a great benefit for our seniors, really something that we wanted to mitigate not only the general cost of living, but a project right here. So if you're telling me that, well, gee, Steve, I already take advantage of this, it's a great program, I'm not going to get an extra 18, am I? No, but you're going to get an extra 600. So if we go back a slide or two, Ian, if we could, one more. So if you're in the $400,000 or $500,000 range for your home, it's covering almost the entire tax increase here. So it's really a great program for our seniors. Our assessor does a great job. It's very easy to do. The first step is qualifying for the state, and so we're not qualifying. We're not really qualifying anybody. Right? If you qualify for the state, you come in, so you do have to give us some financial information, but to me, I think it's a great benefit for people to do it, and I'm really thrilled that over 200 families every year take advantage of that. You can flip a couple ahead now, Ian. Okay, perfect. Another mitigating factor. We are basing all these figures right here on what our tax levy is today, because I don't know, again, what the tax levy is going to be years down the road. So think of it as that, you're a bunch of roommates, and your rent is $1,000 a month, and there's 4 of you, so each of you are going to pay $250 a month. Did I do the math right? It's the old math. Was there a math teacher here? So what if you got a 5th roommate, okay? Rent stayed the same, so now you're going to pay $200 a month each. Think of that as what new growth means. So new growth is new construction. It's not that everyone's housing value went up. It's actually something new into the mix. So think of the project at the head of the lake that's going to be built, okay? That is going to add to our new growth tax levy. So let's say that adds $5 million, so we can spread that mortgage payment or that bond payment out over $5 more million of tax levy, which will probably bring the average person's bill down by about $100 a year, okay? These are all yearly figures. So, that's another mitigating factor that could go down the road. So let's hope that rates are a little bit lower. People take advantage of the senior tax credit in Wakefield, which does need legislative approval, by the way. I can't imagine it wouldn't, because they already approved the last one, but they only approved it for 3 years. And it's already been filed, so we expect that to happen this year. And new growth would also mitigate that as well. So those are 3 areas that hopefully, I'm a very positive person, maybe those numbers would be a little bit lower. Next slide, please. So I think we can all join in on this. The cost of doing nothing with the building, or the cost of a no vote, what that means is we do risk NEASC, decertification or some action from them. I think at a bare minimum, what that does is put our students, when they go out into the world, into college applications, as a disadvantage, if 2 students are the same, and superintendent can jump in on this, because we've had this discussion. You know what, they're not going to close the school, but maybe our students going forward are at a disadvantage, and I think Doug would agree, correct?
Absolutely, and I alluded to this in my earlier comments. The NEASC accreditation really speaks to the educational experiences that they believe kids should be having in 2023, and they have standards that they compare that against. So that's the critical piece, is we're thinking about educational experiences and also educational outcomes for kids, right? And so if you don't experience certain things in your education, you might be a less competitive applicant as you move on from this space to whatever might be next for you.
Exactly. And some of those deficiencies, many of those deficiencies, all of those deficiencies at some point that we talked about early would have to be addressed, and it would be addressed without any assistance from the SBA, and would be addressed in a piecemeal way. We might hit this, we might hit that. Because if we do get a certain level, and we should do this anyway, we'd have to hit whole-scale accessibility expenses, and those are going to be huge. I don't know how you would even retrofit a new elevator of correct width in here, but that would be a huge expense that we'd have to do. Risk not obtaining MSBA approval for years, okay? This is huge. One of the questions that the SBA asks you, School Building Authority, early on in the process, and remember, we started applying in 2014 or 2015 to even get to this point. It took us, 7 years to get there for the high school. What do you think is going to happen with the community? And community came out in spades for the Galvin, and SBA is looking at that again. So if this were not to be approved by that's why they give you 120 days, by the way. They want to move on to the next project if you're not going to do it. So, that we would be risked. Maybe we reapply again, but we'd be at the bottom of the barrel on that. Exactly. One thing that's been talked about, there are no improvements to the delivery of education by just, bringing the building up to code, as Joe and Doug said. These last 2, I will tell you that there have been many statements and studies made that new high schools, new public buildings, Galvin School, high school, do help in your property values. It attracts people to the community and, makes our properties more valuable, without a question. And lastly, and I don't think this has been talked about enough, is a possible reduction in state education funding. And I know a lot of you have heard me talk over the years, Doug talk over the years about Chapter 70 funding. Chapter 70 funding is money that comes from the state. And somewhere in that formula is a per-student designation. And I will tell you that a student that goes to the high school student, costs more to educate in the state eyes than an elementary school, than a middle school does. So for each high school student, Wakefield actually gets more money in state aid on a per-student basis. So if we don't build the new high school, and, I think a lot of families, I hear them talking about it, that they may send their children to private schools. I think they lose out on a great community experience that I went going here and really enjoyed so much. But from a community, from a town standpoint, we will see a reduction in our state aid from the state, and that'll hurt us in giving other services. Next slide, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, I'd invite Lynn back to talk about the project website and where you can get additional information. Lynn?
Okay, we do have a project website, wakefieldmhsproject.com, and in the header of the website, you'll see FAQs. If you were to click on that, next slide, please. You would come to a series of questions, and under question 18, what will be my increase in property tax? This is what it looked like previously. We took it down because it was based on previous values, and because it was a level tax debt that we calculated. This time, it's a sliding scale based on the cash flow. So you'll see an explanation of, there's two tax calculators on the website now, one for a 4.25% bond rate and one for a 5.5% bond rate. We're hoping that obviously that'll be on the lower end, but we're trying to give you a range of what it could potentially be when we're ready to purchase the bonds. And also, too, because it's a sliding scale, as Mr. Mayo said, we start anywhere from 3 cents per thousand in 2024 and ramp up to about an average tax impact for the years 2029 through 2046. That's what the tax calculators will show you, is that average tax impact. After 2046, it will start to ramp down again to about 10 to 12 cents per thousand all the way to the end of the bond. But the two calculators on there will at least give you the range that your property tax will be at the average for the years that I stated, 2029 through 2046. And there is an explanation indicating that, as well as some links to the slides that you saw here tonight.
Thank you, Lynn. Next slide. This is a terrific picture that was put together by our design team with the new Beasley Oval up at street level, as well as an improved traffic area there. This is time for questions and answers. If you have questions, would you please step up to the microphone, identify yourself, and let us know what your thoughts are?
Hello, Quentin O'Donnell, 35 Pheasantwood Drive. The formula you're using for figuring out my tax liability, it's very different from what you first came out with. Am I correct?
Correct.
Tell me about that.
Well, I think the first one that came out with, we didn't know the exact number, first of all. Yeah. And the first one that came out considered borrowing all the money all at once. Yes. So it was a very simple kind of ballpark figure. That would be kind of, I hate paying interest on something we're not going to use.
Yeah.
And the first one also was at 5.5%. So we're giving a sliding scale to really give a much more accurate reflection of what will happen. And I think when you get to that full amount down, it's probably very close to the initial number that was coming out with.
Okay, and that happens sort of midpoint in this 30-year,
yeah,
from what I just gathered?
It actually comes in, 2029. Yeah, fiscal year 29, which will start in 28.
Okay.
July 28.
Yeah, and one more question, the vocational school.
Yep.
How will I figure that into my impact in my tax?
The vocational school is not outside of the regular tax levy.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for your questions. Anyone else?
Hi, Martin Sander, 29 Pittman Ave. Again, about the tax levy and the calculation. In the last 25 years, my house has tripled, quadrupled in value. Presumably, that'll continue on some sort of a trend, especially with the new high school. That means that the amount that the tax is based on, it's a percentage, so my amounts will go up. Does that mean the bond will get paid off sooner?
No. No. So what would happen is the calculator, we're going to pay the same money every year on the bond. It's like a mortgage payment, right?
So it's a fixed amount. So if my value
goes up
triples,
and it's spreading out, it's not going to triple if your value triples.
my property tax will, but not this portion of it.
Exactly. Well, it may not. Hopefully it won't.
But it will.
That's a good thing when you sell, though.
Bob Vitale. You said in 2014 and 15 and 16, the Mass School Building Association rejected us. Can you tell us why they did that 9 years ago?
They base it on need, and we actually had tours with the head of the SBA, Jack McCarthy, and basically, Jack said there are other communities that have greater needs than you do, that are worse off, so you've got to wait in line.
Okay, so
That's
now...
basically what happened. Yeah.
Okay, so out of 352 cities and towns, now we are at the worst.
And also, they have a limited amount that they can do a year, right? They don't have an unlimited amount of money.
Okay.
At the thing. Is that what you're going to say, Lynn?
Well, right, and I was also going to say that based on where they're at now and because of the economy, they are cutting in half the number of schools that they're going forward with because of costs. So, say you didn't pass the school this time around, it could be up to 10+ years before you could ever get back into the MSBA process.
They used to do about 10 schools, at least 10 a year, and they're now looking at approximately 5. So if this doesn't pass, it's really a long time before we would probably be able to get in line again with the MSBA.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Doug Heath, here in Wakefield. Looking at the new high school, what will be the cost savings going forward over the next several decades regarding energy use and cost? As you know, to heat this place, provide lighting, gas, oil, and so forth, that is probably quite a lot of money per year. Will the new high school have any savings in energy use looking down the road? In terms of LED lighting, cost of electricity, and so forth.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. So the building will be designed to be a very high-performance facility. The MSBA process has certain guidelines that we need to follow, and also some that are there are incentives for us to go a little bit further. So the building will achieve 20% better energy efficiency than even the code will require us to do. And the codes are always pushing higher and higher in terms of what we're required to deliver in terms of a project. So that's a big thing that we're looking at. Relative to this facility, we did a calculation of what the energy use per square foot is per year. And we're going to reduce that by a factor of something like 4, just to give you a sense. There's no insulation in the walls of this building, sort of roughly speaking. A lot of the windows are single pane, so it's very poorly insulated. And so one of the first things we do is we basically super insulate. We use passive house approaches, if you want to Google that. I mean, it basically means that it's a very robust insulation around the entire project. We have a lower window-to-wall ratio, so we're limiting the amount of glazing on the project. And also knowing that the type of glazing we use, which is a triple glazed unit, that's more expensive, so we want to be cost sensitive with that as well. So that's really something that's a major part of the sustainability kind of outlook, which, the whole sort of client team of the district and the town, and even partnering with the utility of there being a microgrid being provided for both the new high school and the new Voc that's going to be constructed. Right, which the move is toward fossil-free, fossil fuel-free. Sorry, I'm hearing and I'm speaking. So the building will be all electrified, meaning the mechanical systems will not be using fossil fuel energy. And there is, a shift in terms of, the overall cost picture of utility cost of electric versus gas. But overall, to your first question, high-performance building in terms of energy efficiency.
So looking at the rendition on the screen there, the roofs are white. So that's for greater reflectance and less absorbance from the sunlight.
You got it.
Any consideration putting, solar cells on the roof?
That is part of the plan. So solar panels themselves are not being funded as part of the project, but we provide the infrastructure for the utility, for the town to enter into a purchase agreement with WMGLD to provide those panels, and that's how we get to the zero net energy status in the future. So we call it a net zero ready facility because the project isn't building those elements on the roof, but even the new codes are requiring 50% of available roof to be PV ready, and that's what we're doing.
We also had discussions with the MLD to be engaged in solar, installing the solar panels on the roof.
Thank you very much for your questions.
And there'll be charging stations too.
Yes.
For cars.
Scott Robertson, 10 Laurel Street. Joe, in the overall number, is there a fudge factor so that if we go over by $50 million, it's incorporated into that final number or not? I thought I heard you mention something like that.
We don't use that.
We don't use the word fudge factor. We might use
overrun?
The word heart attack.
How about an overrun?
Within the $273 million in there, we put in $30 million in contingencies, okay, for the construction, for the owner's contingency. There's 3 different types of contingencies. The third one is an escalation, just in case. Let's assume we have the inflation that occurred within the past year. We don't anticipate that. We don't think that's going to happen, but, we are not procrastinators of the world, and, something, God forbid, might happen again. But we have added that into the calculation of the $273 million, so that hopefully we will not have any need for any more funds. Like most other communities around here who had bid their project before the pandemic hit, had to go back for more funds. We do not want to do that, and that's why we put in those contingencies.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the panel for your countless hours and putting into this project, whether it succeeds or doesn't succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stoneham just went back last week for more money because they fell into that category.
I want to add, too, that as I was looking at the work that the town had done on the bonding, they're bonding over 3 different bonds, and the last bond is the amount of our construction and owner's contingency. Should we not have to use that, you would not have to go after that 3rd bond, which would affect everybody's tax rate, and that's really our goal moving forward.
And a recent project that SMMA has been involved in another community, they did not need to use those contingencies at all, or close to it. I wouldn't say everything, but otherwise they'll throw something at me here.
Yet.
They
did it once, they can do it again, right?
Absolutely, and we will hold them to it. Don't worry about that.
Joe Tavano, 23 Eden Street. I have a lot of questions. I don't expect you to address them all as we go. First, $273 million is a lot of money. I am a fan of new schools. I love Wakefield. Family's been here for 100 years. I like new buildings. I like nice stuff. Out of that 273, the town's going to be responsible for 213?
208.
208. I thought the state pays up to 50%. Is that correct?
50% of eligible cost.
Right, and I understand
They have that little word in there, eligible.
So I personally...
And that cut it down from 54%, from 52% to approximately 25%, somewhere around there?
Okay,
21%, because of the word eligible.
So myself and probably many other taxpayers would like to see a greater percentage from the state. Now, I know I've spoke to Mr. Mayo about this, and the state is below whatever. But irregardless or regardless, I did go to Wakefield High, I would like to see I would like to see a bigger percentage from the state. And we talk about the property values, house 400,000, 600,000. I don't think, there's very few houses in Wakefield now that are valued $600,000. $1 million isn't $1 million anymore. So I bet everybody in this room, their houses are probably close to $800,000 to $1 million value. I would say. So we're going to be faced with some big increases, which is, I don't mind paying the money, don't get me wrong, but I want value for my dollar. And when we hear that we're only getting 20%, I don't think I'm getting the value. And then I'm just going to go off with just a couple things. We talk about maintenance and expenses. That's all good. I'm sitting here now, and I'm warm. The heat's high. I see windows open. To me, that's irresponsibility with town money, and stuff like that irks me. I'm very conservative. I'd like to see the money. I want to see responsibility with the town resources, as we all do. And there's other issues where 273, there's a lot, the town needs a lot of other stuff also. We all want good roads. We can't drive down a road. There's other, I love green space. I'd like more green space. You know, the white elephant, we got a mental health issue in town, people around town. I'd like to see that addressed. Those people get help. There's a lot. So it's a lot of money, a lot of resources to focus on one project. Concerns me. And I just did a little quick math. You know, the average household, you know, 273 million, the average household making 200,000. That's like 1,365 years to, you know, it's kind of irrelevant, but just to get a grasp on those kind of dollars. And the other thing, seeing I'm up here, we take the tour of the school. This is the same school I went to in 1984, graduated Wakefield High. Like I said, my family's been here 100 years. I don't think it's that bad. It's straight, it's clean, it's neat. We have great teachers. We had a great football team. We had a great band, okay? So when we talk about accreditation and that stuff, I kind of think it's a scare tactic, and I don't like that approach, because I think the teachers do an excellent job, and I'd assume give more money to the teachers. That's it for now, but I have a lot more.
Thank you.
Joel, I want to address a couple of those things, but, you know, you come and see me anytime, as you know.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I know. On the taxes, I'll tell you that 68% of the homes in Wakefield are assessed $700,000 or lower. So the majority of that, you know, is lower than that.
So back to the taxes, too. So when we have this increase, we talk about the increase for the school. I read something about, you know, and I have a degree in accounting, I still don't understand it, maxing out the 2.5%. Yeah. Or 2.5%. So the tax increase for the school doesn't include any other increases, doesn't include any other future overrides. Correct. You know, it's I feel bad for the average person who lives here with the taxes. Me, it doesn't really matter, because, you know, my stuff's rental. I can raise my rents, all right? But the average family tries to survive. I mean, I've base that little simple math on 200,000 a year, a lot of us, I don't make 200,000 a year, you know, family income. And I'm sure a lot of people in Wakefield don't. You know, and it's just to see them get hit with that big bill. Now, the other side of the coin, okay, I'd like, if we could be more creative, find more ways to generate revenue. I mean, I don't know if the town doesn't want to get into selling assets, and I don't want to go into certain things we could do to be more creative to raise funds, all right? If I want a new car, a new kitchen, you know, maybe I go out and shovel someone's driveway. I don't know. But there's more ways to be creative. And I'd like to see the town be more creative, okay? I mean, we need to solve that or something. Just got to be a little more creative to generate revenue. I know the town's not a business, but I've always felt we should treat the town like a business.
I think that Wakefield was one of the instigators for MSBA raising their eligible cost per square foot for construction.
Which is great. If I'm doing something and someone's giving up to 50% or up to whatever it is, I'm going to make sure I get that money. All right. Now I know we want to have special stuff, and we want to have we're going above and beyond, but we've got a beautiful field now. We've got new fields. There's fields across the street. I don't know whose they are. We've got a beautiful field at the Galvin. I mean, can we share resources? Scale down the project, share resources. We talk about meeting space. We've got the Civic Center, beautiful. They got a brand new floor, right? Nice building. We got the Galvin, beautiful building. I mean, I just think there's more ways to build it to be a little more conservative, so everybody gets what they want, a little more fiscal responsibility, a little easier on the taxpayers, and then maybe, you know, pave a street or two.
We do have a $10 million bond program for street paving, so
Yeah,
yeah.
unfortunately,
It's coming.
$10 million, $1 million isn't $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, $1 million, we're talking 273, $250 million, like it's, you know, it's a big number, but when you sit down and you actually think, do some math, it's a lot of money.
Right.
One of the problems is that MSBA changed their caps on all of those eligible costs. Whereas in the Galvin, we got close to around 40-some% of quote-unquote eligible costs. And now we're getting like half of that. And that really hurts. I'll be honest with you.
The state is flush with cash. A lot of us got money back. And I got money back because overpayments. So you're right. The state should be stepping up more. So what do we got to do to get close to that 50%? I mean, that's what I'd like to see.
Joe, thank you.
Value for the dollar. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. If there are other questions that we can address after, or if you'd like to come in anytime, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, I appreciate you all. Do a great job. I've all worked very hard on this. Like I said, I'm not unopposed. I like new schools, nice towns. I like nice stuff. Mr. Mayor will tell you. All right? I want a nice town and improve the town. All right?
Thank you so much. Next up.
Hi, Andy Bray, and I'm with the Yes for WMHS group. And, you know, I kind of like, this is a real sticking point for me, because when we started looking at this and we realized we weren't at 50%, we were at 23%, we said, what the heck's that about? And so, you know, dug into the numbers and looked at what's it based on. You know, at the time we built the Galvin, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but the difference between what the state was reimbursing and what construction costs were was like a 2-digit number. Now they're reimbursing at what, 429 or 4? What's the new rate? I don't know. It was 360. 393. So they moved it from 360 to 393, and we're building at 860. So that's why we're not at 50%. And that's the market, and that's construction costs, available materials, labor. You know, the notion that's out there that this school that's been planned is like, I actually saw the words Taj Mahal used in the paper the other day. I think the Taj Mahal is a little bigger, and if this is only 3% bigger than the school we're in, I don't think that's the Taj Mahal. And to the point of advocating for more state funding, I want to, the town did a pretty darn good job of it. Our elected officials did a pretty darn good job of it. There was a local petition drive by citizens straight to the treasurer, straight to the MSBA. Let's get that rate up. This is ridiculous. Look at where the market's at. Look at where you guys are reimbursing at. The gap is just gigantic. It's so inequitable for towns that it's shifting this much of the burden to towns to build schools for their kids. But it is what it is, and they pushed hard. We tried to push a little bit. We got it from 360 to 393, which was pretty much, if you look at the reimbursement rate increase over time, it's pretty much about what anybody expected. We weren't going to get a windfall. They weren't going to go from 360 to 660. And it's broken. The system's broken. Talk to your legislators, tell them to put more funding in for schools. That's the problem. We don't have enough at the state level funding going to the MSBA for them to be able to give out more and do more projects and reimburse at a higher rate. So sorry to get on my soapbox, but I can't agree with you more about the 50% thing. It's nuts, but it is what it is. And this building's not going to get cheaper to build later, so we got to do it.
Well,
thanks.
Now I want to bring up another thing.
Joe, if you could step up to the mic, because they can't hear you on WCAT.
Sure. So I'm in the construction business. We talked about the roof here. Carlisle Syntex Systems, Carlisle Roofing Systems, I'm sure you heard of them. Greenwood Industries does a lot of roofs in Wakefield. They're one of our customers. We talk about the white roof. A white roof is double the color of a black roof. We are in New England, okay? We have more heating days than cooling days. The amount of money you spend to put a white roof on because everybody thinks it's environmentally is not good. You're better off taking that savings, throwing another layer of insulation on the roof, and you'd save money and you get a better product. I mean, there's actually been studies where they changed the temperature of the surface of the roof. It's created condensation issues, mold issues, because you're moving that dew point between the layers of the roof. That's just something that when everybody tries to sell a white roof, it's fine, but we're not in Texas. And there's other value engineering I'd like to see. And then I could talk about maintenance. We got the new Galvin School. I know we've had some issues with some settling with some faucets and some other things. I'd like to see someone actually, some kind of oversight when it's built, which I'm sure there is, but just a different, so we're not having these problems. When we walked around this school that I mentioned, and I'm not pointing fingers or anything, it's warm, heat's on, windows are open. We have oil and gas here, I found out. Oil, $5 a gallon, okay? That's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. And like I said, I don't appreciate waste.
Thank you. Other questions?
Hi, Scott Hartman, 5 Highland Ave. So there's going to be some savings with maintenance and energy with a new high school, I presume. Do we have a dollar figure, using today's dollars, what that would be?
You're talking about operational cost?
Operational costs, yeah.
So as we mentioned before, the energy efficiency of the facility is going to be something like 4 times less. Mm-hmm. The operational cost is a little bit difficult to analyze apples to apples because you have a building here that doesn't have air conditioning, mm-hmm. and we're intending to provide a building that has air conditioning. So the numbers are not going to line up exactly. But I think the big takeaway is really the energy efficiency of the new project. So, the cost overall of the project is going to be basically taking that energy efficiency of, if you compare it with today's codes, something like 40%. And so we're also, designing beyond what the code is going to require. There are new codes coming online this year. So we're going to be better than those codes as well. We don't have final figures on how much we're going to beat that by, but it will be a multiple times factor more efficient than the current building. It's difficult to put a dollar amount on it, But compared with if this building had air conditioning, we would be better by something like 40%, maybe 50%, just to give a sort of ballpark range.
So that's pretty significant. Where would that money go, right? If we're spending, if we'll spend less money, obviously there'll be money. Does that go back to the school system? Does it go back to the town? How does that work? Anyone know?
You just pay less to run the new building.
Right, but there's
You have a less operating budget for the new school.
So the budget will be dropped down? The schools will drop their budget?
Well, that portion.
That portion.
That portion, there may be, other educational issues that they could focus on.
Got it. Thank you.
Although I would like to tell the superintendent I'd drop his budget a little bit for that.
Right. As a member of the Finance Committee, I'll go along with that. But,
I think part of that story also ties in with the idea that the building now is not sort of properly or efficiently run. There's a limitation to what the facility is. It doesn't have controls that allow you to have a sort of overview of the entire building. A new project will have a building management system that has intelligence to it, right? So not only is the whole envelope completely controlled, and you know what the inputs are for each space, you have a whole readout of the entire facility in front of you that, basically you can manipulate from one point, right? It's not that you have to run around opening and closing windows. That's really a lot to ask, are you putting your finger in the air to understand what the air temperatures are? So a new system will have a high degree of sensing and intelligence and control and can be optimized. So you see the performance of the entire building and you can manipulate, all of the mechanical system from one point. And just a quick note on the roof color. Yes, the white roofs tend to be higher cost than if you did a sort of traditional like asphalt roof or something. But we're trying to reach a LEED requirement for the project. And so a white roof is not, if you're putting a black roof on, it's adding insulation is not going to make up for that. It has to do with the reflectance and the heat island effect, which we need to have the reflective roof. We need to have a light-colored roof to be able to do that. We're already maxing out the insulation that's actually useful on a roof. There gets to be, as you know, you do roofs. If you put too much insulation on, it starts to be not effective anymore. And we do intensive energy modeling to make sure that we're putting the right amount on to get the most benefit back for it.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, and I know we have an online question as well.
Hi, Myra Sessions, 40 Richardson Street. First of all, I want to bring us back a little bit. We've had a really exceptional, and I'm again very grateful to the teachers and for the principal for coming here and sharing with us the vision of the educational plan that this new school enables. I feel like at the end of the day, sort of we get stuck in sort of roof color and some things which are important, but at the end of the day, I mean, what some may see as sort of wasteful or sort of outside the norm, I see as opportunity. My kids, one of whom is back there reading, are now students at the Woodville, which we see up there as a little gem, and they've really benefited from really exceptional opportunities for collaboration and learning with their students. They're going to go to the Galvin next, which is beautiful and amazing, and sort of you see some of the innovation and some of the education and the opportunity that comes out of the Galvin is just really exciting and really gratifying to be a member of this community and knowing that those are the opportunities that our kids have. And so when I look at this building and when I hear the educators talk about the potential that the space, how education has changed since 1960 when this particular building was built, and how we have this opportunity to invest in our kids and give them those opportunities to really be collaborative, to do project-based learning, to have a library that they want to. I want to spend time in that library, and having seen the current library, it's just not welcoming, and we need to be able to. We need to keep the focus on our kids as we think about this. conversation. And so I really thank you, educators, for you guys have done. I mean, we attended some of those early community forums like 2 years ago when sort of educators spent a huge amount of time designing what is the vision for our kids and for our education. And so thank you to you for being here and also for all that work that's gone into this. So I want to call us back to sort of this idea of it's not that bad. So, and I've spent some time reading the 2,000-page report, which was the sort of preliminary submission that you all made to MSBA. I looked at sort of the systems. I'm not an expert. But I read the 100 pages or whatever about the systems, the uninsulated walls that we've talked about, the windows that don't hold moisture, the sort of the boiler that was built, it's an original boiler. So I'm wondering, Tim, if you could spend a little bit of time, sort of you had on one of your sort of if we vote no slides, like we're going to have these expenses coming up. Could you spend a little bit of time talking about what are those expenses that you see if we're not able to build from new? What are we looking at in terms of sort of these ongoing expenses that the town is going to have to pay because we're looking at catastrophic system failure?
Sure. Some of the things, and I'm not sure whether or not I did a really good job on my slide presenting this. I'll start with the roof. The roof is something that is an issue for us. We do frequently invite subcontractors in to repair the roof. I spoke a little bit about this on the tour. When you see a ceiling tile that has been leaked on, so what we'll do is we'll identify the area on the roof that needs to be repaired. We invite the company in to do those repairs and then replace the tile. We are constantly sort of playing whack-a-mole with the roof. We chase that around constantly. That's something we see the roofer once or twice a week. With this recent snow yesterday, we saw some new leaks in the superintendent's area of the building. So that's something that we're constantly spending money on. Additionally, the boilers, we have the primary boilers in this building are gas-fed. We also have oil-fed backup boilers. Those are components of this building that are extremely old, some original to the building. And those, we have a subcontractor who works with a lot of public schools in Massachusetts called Wilkinson. And you will see a Wilkinson van here most days. We are constantly trying to manage temperatures in this building. We have a lot of classrooms that sort of, I call it kind of runaway heat. We reach temperatures north of 80 degrees commonly. This is something that it's uncomfortable for teachers, it's uncomfortable for students. It's not an atmosphere that supports comfortable learning. It pains me sometimes when I walk the halls and I hear students coming out of classrooms and saying, geez, it was so hot in that classroom, I couldn't even pay attention. Or you'll hear from teachers, students will fall asleep, it's too warm. So those are areas we're spending a lot of money on. We were lucky enough to get an large oil delivery last year when oil was around $2.40 a gallon. So I estimate that we are in good shape with that delivery until if we were to move forward with a new building, we should be good on oil for now, because that's just a backup system. Plumbing is a constant issue for us in this building. We're lucky to partner with the town buildings department, Chris Pierce and his crew, who support us daily. Anytime we call for service, they're here most of the time within an hour, and projects constantly addressed on a weekly basis. And sometimes we're able to share some of those costs, and we greatly appreciate that. But we mostly, appreciate their attention to all the issues that we call their attention to. I could truly go on all day about the money that we spend on maintenance issues and things of that nature, based on the fact that there is so much aging infrastructure here at Wakefield High. So I don't want to drag on, but I appreciate your question. Thank you.
Susie Veyer, 15 Aborn Ave. I'm going to actually ask a question on behalf of someone who posted on Facebook who's not able to be here. Mr. Mayo, of the estimates for taxes, do they take into consideration all of the development that we know is coming, particularly at the head of the lake? And so we know
They don't.
they don't.
In fact, I think I mentioned this.
Did I maybe miss that?
That's a mitigating factor, because it's very difficult for me to say, what is new growth going to be? So when you spread a constant, once it hits that level, constant payment, spreading it out over more entities, that will come down. But I think the slide showed that, $5 million in new growth might lead to $100 a year reduction.
And do we think that the
I think
head
that
of the
we're going to
lake
hit
will?
that, but I can't.
Right, we can't guarantee it, but
can't
those are the
guarantee it.
estimates. But
Yeah.
but the chart that you have shown does not take into consideration that.
Does not include new growth.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for your question. We also have a question from someone, viewer online, and I'm wondering if Erin can help us with this. There's a question about where is the parking and how many parking spots are there?
Good question. I love talking about parking, as you know. So right now, the high school site has 269 spaces. These are spaces marked on-site near the school. The spaces are for accessible folks needing accessibility needs. There are spaces marked for teachers and staff. There are spaces for WCAT. There are spaces for district offices, among other spaces, and of course, students. We've understood, we've worked really hard with the district and with the town to establish a parking program for the new project. And so, to that end, we are going to be providing 330 spaces. The project will be. As you can see, the site is pretty well constrained. By the time we build the building and replicate Beasley Oval, we have limited areas on site to provide an increased parking. So what we're going to do to achieve this 330 spaces is we're expanding the parking lot across from Landrigan Field by about 50 spaces, so that we will provide this expanded parking program for the community.
Thank you very much. So I want to be respectful of people's time. If people have additional questions or comments and they'd like to come up as we're kind of closing out the forum, we would certainly welcome that. I think we have one more question.
A very quick question.
Of course.
What?
Could you speak into the microphone?
What? Hello, Dolly. Well, what proportion of the projected budget is for refurbishment? Furniture and all that. I don't want to quarrel about the building process, but it seems like maybe that wish list could be cut back a little bit. Heard a lot about state-of-the-art and a college-level experience, and I wonder how necessary, state-of-the-art is, So what portion of the budget is going to be attributed to all the fancy-dancy furniture and everything?
I don't know if there's going to be any fancy-dancy, but I do know that out of the $273 million, $220 are construction costs. The other $53 million are indirect, also known as sometimes as soft costs for designers for the OPM and for the other things such as that.
Okay.
Or we'll just call it fancy-dancy. I like that.
No, I mean, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more quick question. Are we using any of the existing furniture and fixtures from this?
I don't think that determination has been made yet as to, you'd have to go through each and every room and each and every piece.
But I'm assuming like the music equipment we saw, we've got some nice pianos, a lot of nice
I couldn't hear.
town assets, all that stuff.
Pianos and music equipment.
That equipment will move from one space to the new space. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Part of this project is not to outfit all spaces with everything brand spanking new, please. So thank you very much. I want to be respectful of people's time. Again, if you have questions and you'd like to come up, we'll certainly be here for a little bit. Thank you again. Thank you for coming. There'll also be time for another tour if you did not get an earlier tour. So thank you so much, and thank you to WCAT for hosting this morning. Thank you.